Welcome to the Wire to Wire podcast. As always, it's me, your host Yusuf. Now, without further ado, let's just get right to it. It looks like the Memphis Grizzlies are ready to move on from the Ja Morant era, and it appears as though Ja Morant is also ready to move on from the Memphis Grizzlies. So at this point, it seems as though a breakup is inevitable between both parties. Now, I think this ultimately begs the question of where will Ja Morant go? Now, I think with his immense talent and skill set, that he should have a plethora of options at his disposal on where he wants to play. However, I think he's going to have a very thinned out market because of the bad PR that has come with him the past few seasons now. Now, the off court distractions, the antics, all of that has really, I believe, lowered and hindered his trade value across the league, that many organizations will look at a player like Ja Morant and see that he is more trouble than his talent is worth. Now, I think with him is that he started off very strong in his career and shown that he has a lot of potential and promise. And I think that there was improvements each season. However, I do think the past couple of seasons, we have seen a plateau on his development, that he hasn't really evolved or grown in terms of his game or his style of play. And also, too, he's been battling injuries the past couple of seasons as well. So that lack of growth, combined with that limited development, combined with the injury history, and of course, the antics that I was discussing about earlier, all of that combined has really reduced and marginalized his trade value across the league. So I think that he's going to have very limited trade options, or even the Memphis Grizzlies are going to have limited trade options on where they could send him off to. And it's unfortunate because a player of his magnitude, you would think that out of the entire league, 29 teams would have some level of interest in what he brings to the table. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think Memphis Grizzlies are going to have to do a lot of work and diligence to be able to offload him to a team. Now, I have some teams that I would like to see him go to, factoring in his skill set, what he brings to the table, as well as the off-court antics that I believe will help mitigate. Now, some teams that have been floated around is the Miami Heat, the Sacramento Kings, if I'm not mistaken, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, the Miami Heat, basketball-wise, I think would be pretty interesting. Having him playing alongside a guy like Bam, Andrew Wiggins as well, assuming that they don't include him in a trade package. But if you have those three players, it might make things interesting. However, again, with the off-court antics, I don't know how a guy like Ja Morant would fare in a city like Miami, where obviously there's a lot of distractions. The nightlife, the women. We know what happens in the 305. And I believe that that would not be conducive for him off the court. And I don't think the Miami Heat would be able to mitigate some of those risks. As much as they talk about the Heat culture, and Pat Riley likes to maintain a very tight ship within the Heat organization, there's only so much you can do. So I don't know if Miami would really unlock and bring out the best in a player like him. Now, the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think basketball-wise, I'm not quite sure. Because Anthony Edwards, while he is someone that can play off the ball, he is also an alpha, and he does require the ball to be in his hands a certain number of times. So while theoretically it looks as though Ja Morant can take the ball out of his hands and take that pressure off of him, both of these guys' personalities, I don't know how well it's going to mesh on the court. With the game on the line, would Ja Morant be comfortable taking a back seat to a guy like Anthony Edwards and letting him bringing it home? Or is he going to take it upon himself to want to take the game over and take game-winning shots? Now, Anthony Edwards, I'll give him credit. I think he's a really good leader. I like the way that he bigs up his other teammates and he gives them props. He speaks very highly of them and gives them credit. However, with a guy like Ja Morant, he might not get the memo or the idea that he's the number two on this team. So I think there can be a little bit of I guess you can say, an identity crisis, so to speak, on who's the number one, who's the number two, whose team is it going to be. Now, Anthony Edwards, I'll give credit. He is showing a lot of maturity on the court in terms of taking on more responsibility, elevating his clutch play. He's taken on the role of leadership a lot more serious. Would having a guy like Ja Morant in the locker room, would it stunt that growth? That's something that I think about. So I don't believe it would be necessarily a good fit for him. Now, the Sacramento Kings wouldn't really be of benefit for him. He might revitalize that franchise from an excitement point of view, but I don't think it's going to lead to a lot of wins just because of how that team is constructed. So sending him to Sacramento would be the equivalent of sending him to a basketball gulag. I don't think that's where he needs to be at this stage in his career. Now, some teams that I would like to throw out there that I think would be a good fit for a guy like Ja Morant. Number one would be the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, Milwaukee, he obviously is playing alongside of a superstar like Giannis, so there's no question on whose team that will be. It's Giannis's team. He has the experience. He has the ring. So it's his team. There's no doubt about it. I think Ja Morant's ability to score and play make would take a lot of the pressure off of Giannis. And also, too, I think he would bring a lot of energy to that team, especially in the Eastern Conference, where this season it's wide open. I think they could make a lot of noise and make a strong playoff push and maybe even push towards making a finals appearance. I think they're capable of doing that. Plus, a city like Milwaukee is a very calm, very chill kind of city. So there's not really a lot for him to get caught up in. And there's not going to be a lot to distract him from the main focus, which is basketball. So I think being in that kind of environment would make him focus on basketball, and that would become the main thing and the main priority for him. Another city that I'm going to throw out there is the San Antonio Spurs. He'd be playing alongside of a talent like Wemby, and right now the San Antonio Spurs are already looking like contenders. He could be the piece that puts them over the top. His ability to score, his playmaking, I think would be a great value add to the San Antonio Spurs. And also, too, a very nice city. And also a relatively small city. So there's not going to be a lot of distractions for him to get caught up in. So he would also be an environment where he could just focus on the game of basketball. And also, too, because San Antonio is poised to be able to be a playoff team and may possibly contend for a championship depending how things shape up, he could really elevate their chances of becoming a championship team. So maybe if they had a window of wanting to win within the next 2 to 3 years, maybe perhaps he would be able to expedite that process and put them in a position to contend, maybe even this year. So I think from a basketball standpoint, it's not really a bad idea to have him go to the San Antonio Spurs. But those are the only two teams that I could really think of right now that could have an immediate use for a guy like him that could really elevate and improve those teams' chances. I think Ja Morant has a lot of potential. However, I think there's a maturity aspect that's missing. And I think sometimes just being in the right environment can really help bring someone along in terms of their maturation process. And I don't think Ja Morant is any different. If he is in a situation where he is forced to mature and he's also competing and playing for something meaningful, I think that will only improve his engagement as well as allow him to reshift his focus towards basketball. So Milwaukee Bucks as well as the San Antonio Spurs, those are the two teams that I could see him immediately having an impact on. But that's all I got for you guys for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and share with your people. You guys can also follow me and the podcast on social media. You guys can check out my books. All of the links will be in the description as well as pinned in the comments. Until next time.